Do you recognize this picture? Do you understand what this diagram is showing you? What each of these have in common is that they depict a cycle which your body undergoes roughly 100,000 times a day. So what might be a brief overview, the goal today is to explain just how the heart operates and how those functions provide the much needed sustenance to keep the body running. More specifically, I will be sharing the pathway that blood takes through the heart and how these movements are recorded and what nutrients blood is delivering to the body. As I prepared for the nursing program here at BYU Idaho, I've had the opportunity to participate in both 264 and 265 lecture classes and labs. These courses go in-depth on the fundamentals of the anatomical and physiological systems, such as the cardiovascular, respiratory, urinary, endocrine, and more. Upon the completion of these, I know I have a solid knowledge of the anatomy and physiology of the heart, and my desire is to share that knowledge. With that said, here is how the human heart propels blood and provides nutrients throughout the body. I will first begin by explaining the basic anatomy of the heart and the vasculature through the body. This will provide the groundwork for the progression of the speech, potentially allowing for one to make easier connections between points. The heart is mainly composed of 4 chambers. These are called the right and left atrium and ventricles. Separating each atrium and ventricle is the valve which allows the blood to flow through to the next chamber without backflow. Between the heart and lungs are vascular tubes known as pulmonary arteries and veins. These allow for the movement of blood to and from the lungs. The left ventricle connects to the aorta for pumping blood to the rest of the body. Once the oxygenated blood leaves the aorta, it is carried through the body in vascular tubes called arteries. At the site of tissues, the arteries connect to much smaller vessels called capillaries. This is where nutrients are exchanged. From capillaries, the now deoxygenated blood is transported back to the heart by way of the veins. The final major veins to enter the heart are called the inferior and superior vena cava. According to clevelandclinic.org, your body has more than 60,000 miles of blood vessels that circulate about 1.5 gallons of blood every day. For the heart to beat, it requires an electrical signal. As the signal travels down, it causes the muscles within the heart to contract. These contractions are what allow for blood to flow to each chamber of the heart, to the lungs, and back out to the body. It begins at the right atria, moving down the center of the heart until it reaches the apex, or bottom tip of the heart. This then causes the ventricles to contract, propelling blood upwards and out of the heart. These electrical signals travel down specific cells known as autorhythmic or pacemaker cells. These in turn cause the heart muscles known as cardiomyocytes to contract. According to the website md.com, at rest, a normal heart beats around 50 to 90 times a minute. Exercise, emotions, fear, and some medications can cause your heart to beat faster, sometimes well over 100 beats per minute. With the understanding of the heart and vascular anatomy, I will now move on to show how these electrical and physiological processes are recorded for a medical evaluation. The method for recording the electrical conduction of the heart is done through what is known as an electrocardiogram, or EKG. As explained by mayoclinic.org, during an EKG, up to 12 sensors, or electrodes, are attached to the chest and limbs. The electrodes are sticky patches with wires that connect to a monitor. These record the electrical signals that make the heart beat, and a computer records the information and displays it as waves on a monitor or on paper. This data is presented on a line graph and looks like this. Each bump or wave located on the EKG line represents a different electrical stage of the heart contraction. Our first small bump, known as the P wave, is indicative of the atria beginning to contract. The large jagged line, known as the QRS complex, represents the beginning of the contraction of the ventricles. The final bump, the T wave, tells us that the ventricles are now beginning to relax. If one might be wondering why we do not see any sign of the atria relaxing, it is because it is masked by the surge of electrical energy of the QRS complex. The diagram represented here shows us the complete cycle that the heart undergoes in a normal concentration and relaxation period. Presented here on this diagram is our EKG, which signals the changes in stages of the cycle. Also present, indicated by the pink line, is the volume of blood within the left ventricle. We see that the P wave of the EKG, represented by the green line, as it begins, the volume increases to its maximum holding before the signaling of the QRS complex. After a QRS complex, we see that the volume is drastically decreasing. This is due to the ventricles contracting and forcing all the blood within them up into the aorta, where it will be transported to the rest of the body. With the understanding of the flow of blood through the heart to the lungs, body, and back again, I will share a little more deeply about the structure and functions of blood itself. The red blood cell, also known as the erythrocyte, which, quote, are the most abundant blood cells according to the, accounting for approximately 99% of all blood cells according to COMM.org, is primarily responsible for the transportation of nutrients throughout the body. To complete this task, it takes on a particular biconcave shape. This not only works to increase the surface area of the blood cell, but it also allows for the cell to be transported by squeezing past other cells. In more detail, we see that the red blood cell is composed of smaller parts. There are 4 large tangled proteins known as globins. Within the globins are 4 heme groups. These heme groups are composed of iron, which allow for blood's primary nutrient, oxygen, to bind. Because there are 4 heme groups, the red blood cell is capable of transporting up to 4 molecules of oxygen on each cell. Well, what is carried to the body? Oxygen is the primary transportee of red blood cells. As mentioned before, 4 heme groups containing each an iron molecule allow for up to 4 oxygen molecules to be transported at a time. And what is carried away from the body? Once the oxygen is delivered to the body tissues, the now deoxygenated hemoglobins, or blood, will work to pick up molecules which they can then transport back out of the body. One of the molecules they will carry is carbon dioxide. This will be carried back to the heart and subsequently to the lungs, where it will be exchanged for oxygen, and the carbon dioxide will be exhaled out of the body. These hemoglobin are also capable of transporting nutrient wastes as well. These are carried to various places, including the liver, intestines, and kidneys. Once dropped in these locations, the wastes will be either converted or excreted from the body. Understanding what the blood transports assists in medical diagnoses. A lack of blood flow through the heart can cause problems related to deficiency in oxygen, called anemia, or can lead to the shutting down of vital organs and body tissues. Without the heart's pumping action, blood can't circulate within the body, as quoted from communitycardio.net. Today, I have shared about the pathway that blood takes through the heart, how these movements are recorded, and what nutrients blood transports throughout the body. Remember that the heart can beat close to 100,000 times a day. Each of these beats consists of the same processes completed repeatedly until the day stops. The very same physiological processes that allow for an individual to go about their days uninterrupted.